Flames claw into the Baltic night as sirens howl across the Gulf of Finland. Primorsk SS loading arms freeze mid-swing, and Russia's biggest Baltic oil lifeline shudders to a halt. By the time the first firefighters arrive, the sky is already orange. What starts as a pinpoint strike has detonated into a supply chain crisis, and somewhere, hundreds of kilometers away, Ukraine's drone crews are watching the telemetry in silence. Backstory: how this moment was engineered. For months, Ukraine has been shaping an invisible battlefield far from the front lines, probing seams in Russia's air defenses, mapping radar gaps along the Baltic coast, and pushing deep strike drones from nuisance to economic artillery. Primorsk isn't just another port. It is the primary outlet of the Baltic pipeline system, a critical artery feeding Russia's seaborne crude exports to Europe and beyond. Cut the flow here, even briefly, and the pressure rises across a network stretching back through pumping stations, storage farms, and inland refineries. The objective isn't spectacle, it's leverage. Strike at the wallet, force redeployments, and make Moscow choose between protecting symbolic targets near the capital or the ports that bankroll the war. Ukraine HSS long-range one-way attack drones, their exact mix classified, have matured fast. Wingspans in the 2 to 3 meter range, piston engines sipping fuel at 150-200 km/h, ranges pushing 800 km with 20 to 50 kW warheads, and increasingly resilient guidance packages blending inertial navigation, terrain reference, STAR visual fixes, and GNSS with spoof-resistant updates. Add sea-skimming USVs, 40-plus knots with hundreds of kilograms of explosive mass, and the target set expands from airfields and refineries to piers, tank farms, and tug berths. But tonight, it's the aerial route that matters. Primorsk's defenses aren't trivial. Around St. Petersburg, Russia stacks layers of radar and SAM systems. Long-range S-400 coverage with 91N6E and 96L6 acquisition radars, medium-range Buk and S-350 rings, and point defense systems like Tor and Pantsir guarding critical nodes. EW emitters and GPS spoofing bubbles attempt to bend flight paths or drown guidance packets. On paper, the shield is thick. In practice, low-altitude, terrain-hugging profiles and multi-axis saturation pry open the seams, especially along the water, where clutter and curvature work in the attacker's favor. Hour 0, X01 Tonnout 12, local, Gulf of Finland. A cold, northeasterly wind skims the waves. Fishing boats show as slow-moving echoes on the coastal radar. Gulls flicker as noise at the edge of the screen. A small formation rides the darkness. Airframes the size of a motorcycle, blacked out, hugging 60-90 meters above sea level. They're not fast, they're patient. Across the border, in a dim room lit by mission monitors, a coordinator whispers checklists. Visual nav locks update every few minutes off shoreline contours and lighthouse silhouettes, cross-checked with inertial drift. The route isn't a straight line. It's a thread through the dead spaces between coverage lobes, learned from weeks of failed runs and data scrapes. Hour 1, 02-07, local, inbound gate first contact. A coastal radar spool sees something low and slow and momentarily tags it as a bird flock. The filter drops it. A Pantsir S1 battery operator yawns, then sits up straight. The track reappears, thin, inconsistent, but real. He cues the search radar. Nothing. The sea clutter is a wall. At the same moment, 14 kilometers inland, a tank farm night shift technician logs an anomalous pressure oscillation in a transfer line. It's nothing. It's everything. Alarms are set sensitive after a summer of accidents, 1,000 kilometers away. The supervisor orders a manual visual sweep. Hour 2, 02.29, local final approach. The first wave splits. 2 drones hold low and wide, arcing along the shoreline. One climbs slightly to skim over breakwaters. The target deck prioritized specific nodes: foam deluge pumps, power transformers, vapor recovery units, and the thin-neck loading arms that translate stored crude into shipments. The warheads aren't massive. The brilliance is target selection. Damage the systems that make firefighting harder and loading impossible, and a small blast buys big disruption. A Tor operator near the perimeter catches an intermittent return and launches. The missile arcs into the dark, slamming seawater minutes later. The drone's profile is too low. Another radar briefly locks the higher bogey. This one is engaged, shredded into fragments that vanish into the surf. The others continue, each following a path pre-computed to balance survival against accuracy. Long, gentle turns to maintain lift at slow speed, timed to terrain, and stitched together by vision. O2-33, Impact 1. A flash at the utility yard, white, then orange. A transformer disintegrates and a cascade of sparks lights up the night. The power blinks, trips, recovers on backup, then dies again as emergency switchgear isolates the fault. 2 seconds later, alarms flood the control room. Ventilation kicks to emergency. The port's backbone has a limp. O2-34, Impact 2, near berth. 3. A loading arm in mid-rotation suddenly jolts. A shaped charge rips through hydraulic lines and oil sprays into the air like black rain. Auto-shut valves slam closed, but residual product pools beneath the gantry and catches fire. The flame is low and ugly, crawling under steel as foam cannons spin up. The first fire team hesitates at the heat shimmer. There's a second detonation risk. They wait for foam coverage that isn't arriving. Why? Because O2-35, Impact 3. The deluge pump house erupts. Not a big blast, devastatingly placed. Without those pumps, fixed foam monitors lose pressure. Manual units can't keep pace. A small blaze that would have been smothered in 90 seconds now breathes. Hour 3, 03.02. Local chaos at the perimeter. Port security closes the access roads and calls municipal fire brigades from 2 districts. Tugboats pivot their monitors toward the jetty as a preventive curtain. Transneft dispatchers upstream throttle input to avoid overpressure in the tank farm. A crude flow that normally moves like a heartbeat flutters and stalls. Tank levels are stable, but the loading queue is broken. Berths 1 and 2. Idle. Berth 3 burns. Berth 4 is evacuated as heat load rises. 1 berth down can be workarounds. 2 is a pause. 3 is a shutdown. A second wave whispers in. Russia's operators are awake now. Pantsir guns thunder tracer lines across the dark, and this time, 1 drone disintegrates in a smear of sparks. Another slips through, clipped but flying. It aims low, not at a tank but at a control conduit running along a service trench. The explosion looks minor. The effect is surgical. A tangle of wires, a dead segment of automated valves, and a control room that suddenly finds half its readings gone. Day 1, Euro 7. Local, Primorsk in daylight. Smoke drapes the port like a shawl. Firefighters have the main blaze contained, but it's stubborn. Insulation and spillage smoldering under steel. Temporary suspension of loadings due to safety protocols is the official phrasing as tugs stand off and pilots wave off inbound tankers to safer anchorages. Insurance adjusters are already drafting emails. Satellite eyes look down. The world sees black fans of soot on concrete, a transformer yard scorched, and the white scars of foam. On shore, technicians assess structural integrity. Heat-affected metal, buckled hydraulic arms, overheated seals, and a pump house that will need parts nobody stocks locally. A single day without loadings is a bruise. A several-day pause is a message. Day 1, 10:30. Multi-axis pressure phone lines light up in Moscow. Divert to Ust-Luga? Possible, but capacity there is finite and its own risk profile just ticked up. Stretch to Novorossiysk? Geography and politics complicate the calculus. Each reroute means extra pilotage, scheduling conflicts, higher demurrage, and awkward conversations with buyers ready to load now. Traders, always watching, price in risk. Freight rates for Baltic loadings inch upward. War risk premiums get tinkered. It's not panic, it's friction, and friction is expensive. Day 1, 18. Counterattack in the airwaves. Russian state media calls it a thwarted attempt with minor infrastructure damage. Ukrainian sources, coy, leak just enough to frame the narrative. Long-range drones reached strategic port facilities. OSINT analysts geolocate fires from video reflections in windows. Timestamps get synced to AIS pings showing tankers loitering. Truth emerges in layers. For the operators in the control room, semantics don't matter. No product is moving. Day 2. Diagnostic reality engineers run thermal imaging across cable trays. Insulation that looked intact is brittle. Control cabinets smell faintly metallic and wrong. They swap cards, pull fuses, and find that a small explosion sent a shockwave through a nerve center. Replacement transformers, custom builds, have lead times in weeks. Temporary generators can keep lights on, but not the heaviest loads. Foam systems can be bodged with portable pumps, clumsy but workable once other hazards are reduced. Each workaround buys time, not capacity. Day 3. Strategic echo. Ukraine's deep strike doctrine is now unmistakable. Don't just hit glamorous targets, hit the enabling systems, power, pumps, control, and safety, then let regulatory and insurance constraints do the rest. It's the inverse of terror bombing. It's precision disruption. For Moscow, the dilemma hardens. Pull SAMs and EW from the front to ring the Baltic ports tighter, or accept periodic, expensive outages. The Kremlin hates being forced to choose. That's the point. Week 1. Adaptation and pressure tactical. Russia pushes additional Tor and Pantsir batteries to the perimeter and seeds mobile EW vans along likely aerial corridors. New NOTAMs reshape helicopter routes. Patrol boats get IR search tasking at night, and thermal cameras go up along breakwaters. Operational. Naval and Coastal Command tighten integration, adding harbor radar pics and civilian feeds into a shared plot at a regional command node. It helps, but it doesn't erase low-altitude blind spots over water. Strategic. Buyers ask hard questions. Will our cargo load on time? The answer is carefully worded and not reassuring. Ukraine doesn't need nightly hits. It needs a rhythm, just enough uncertainty to freeze schedules and inflate costs. The next wave doesn't even have to land at Primorsk. Hitting a substation feeding the pipelines 100 km inland can trigger the same pause. Flexibility is a weapon. Week 2. The broader board. NATO air policing along the Baltics sharpens alert cycles as Russian drones probe adjacent airspace to map reactions. The message is unspoken. Keep the fight outside NATO borders. Finland and Estonia revisit coastal sensor fusion and low-altitude maritime radar coverage. Unmanned surveillance buoys join the picture. The Baltic becomes a chessboard of silent eyes. In Kyiv, planners fold the Primorsk strike into a series. Refinery burns in the interior, power substations near export nodes, and the occasional high-profile shipyard accident. Each hit doesn't have to be massive. The aggregate is the strategy. Week 3. The numbers that matter. No dramatic collapse, no sudden victory, just hard arithmetic. Every day of diminished loading is lost revenue measured in millions. Spare parts must be expedited, engineers must be rotated, security must be paid overtime. The cost of defense rises, the efficiency of offense remains asymmetric. A $30,000 airframe can force a $3 million repair, a $300,000 insurance recalibration, and a $30 million export hiccup. This is the economics of modern remote warfare. Weapon specs in play, what actually flew. Long-range one-way UAVs, Piston-powered, 2 3-man wingspan, 150-200 kilometers h, range 800-1000 Plok, payload 20 to 50 kgs with fragmentation-shaped charges tuned to machinery and control nodes. Passive RF discipline, visual, shocks, terrain-aided navigation for GNSS-denied segments, and pre-planned low-altitude corridors exploiting coastal clutter. Maritime USVs, held in reserve tonight. 40 to 50 knots, 200 to 400 kilo explosive payloads, stabilized EO, IR mast, and satellite line-of-sight control with autonomous failsafes. Ideal for piers and anchored vessels, but sea state dependent in the Gulf of Finland. Russian air defense, S-400, 350 long to medium range for high-fast threats, Buk-Tor for medium, low altitude, Pantsir S-1 guns missiles for point defense. Strength, layered, dense. Weakness, low altitude over water tracking, saturation with small RCS targets, and the cost imbalance of firing SAMs at lawnmower engines. Tactics, why it worked, multi-axis approach, even a handful of drones from different azimuths forces defenders to split attention and fire control channels. Low, slow, and over water is the worst case for coastal radars packed with ground clutter. Systems targeting. Avoid the tank, hit what keeps the tank from exploding or moving. Deluge pumps, hydraulic heads, power transformers, and control conduits are the nerves and arteries of an energy hub. Damage 3 nodes, and safety protocols shut down the rest. Deception windows. Launch decoys or empty hack tracks to wake up defenses 20-30 minutes early and burn their alertness, then ride the complacency dip. Alternatively, couple a first wave that triggers a radar mode change with a second wave that exploits the new blind spots. Decisions and consequences. Kiev's decision. Except that deep strikes provoke threats of retaliation far from the front. The payoff is strategic, compelling Russia to defend 1,000 points with forces stretched thin. Moscow's decision. Harden critical infrastructure at ruinous expense or endure periodic outages and public embarrassment near the capital. Reallocating air defenses to guard ports risks opening gaps in theater coverage, inviting further strikes on airfields and supply hubs. International consequence. Energy traders reprice Baltic risk. Quietly, some routes shift. Quietly, some buyers hedge elsewhere. Loudly, pundits shout, escalation. On the water, tugs still spray foam, and controllers still click through grayed-out panels. Day 10. The reopened Primorsk partially restarts. 1 berth returns at reduced tempo. 2 more follow with manual safety redundancies in place. A new transformer hums. Temporary pumps vibrate against metal frames. The smell of scorched insulation lingers. On paper, operations are normalizing. In practice, the clock never stops ticking because every night could bring another wave. Day 14. Retaliation cycles. Russia answers with a drone and missile barrage aimed at Ukrainian energy nodes and industrial plants. The rhythm is familiar. Volleys of Shahed-type drones, cruise missiles spiking at dawn, and anti-radiation shots to swat defending radars. Ukraine's air defenses, honed by years of practice, intercept many but not all. Both sides know the game. Hurt the other's capacity to sustain war while avoiding the tripwire that drags a wider alliance into open conflict. Week 4. The new normal security cameras along the Baltic coast stare harder into the night. Patrol boats idle with engines warm. Insurance categories invent new subclauses. And at a windowless facility in Ukraine, a whiteboard lists the next 3 nodes in a network that feeds Primorsk. A substation, a pump array, a control relay. None are glamorous. All are decisive. Political analysis. Why this matters beyond the fire. Deterrence by cost. Ukraine is signaling that every ruble of export revenue now carries a hidden premium. Pay it in defenses, pay it in repairs, or pay it in lost cargoes. Over time, this can shape Russia's strategic choices as surely as battlefield attrition. Baltic theater signaling. Hits this far north ripple through NATO's northern flank. It forces coordination in air policing, coastal surveillance, and crisis messaging, with Finland and the Baltics tightening a sensor web that will outlast the current war. Escalation management. Both sides are walking a razor-acre edge. Ukraine keeps strikes within Russia but aimed at economic infrastructure. Russia threatens broader retaliation but calibrates to avoid a spiral. Each move is a test of political will as much as technical reach. Hour by hour, the anatomy of a strike that pauses a port looks like an action movie. Day by day, the strategy behind it looks like grand strategy. Small machines punching above their weight because they aim at the right places, at the right time, with consequences that far outlive the flames. Epilogue. Eero 2-33, remembered. The first impact isn't the loudest blast, it's the moment a network notices its own fragility. A transformer down. A pump silenced. A loading arm stuck mid-swing. For a few hours, a vast system stops pretending it's invulnerable, and dust motes dance in control room light as operators realize the map they trusted has changed. What happens next if Ukraine keeps pressing these nodes and Russia keeps shifting defenses to guard the revenue spigot? Does the Baltic become the new center of gravity or just another front in a war of 1,000 cuts? What do you think will happen next? Let us know in the comments.